Hip-hop has been a cultural mainstay for over 3 decades, but now people seem to be sick of it, and it leaves the question of how could this have happened? Hip-hop has been the undisputed champ of culture for decades. It's the soundtrack of pain, passion, love, struggle, and every other human emotion in between. However, despite its half-century run and multi-decade-long dominance, the genre has slowly been slipping away from the top spot. Last year showed its 5th consecutive year of decline, going from 30% of all streams in 2020 to just 24% in 2025. So, what's causing this slip? To find the answer, we're doing a full breakdown of hip-hop's history, its rise to the top, and its slow decline. How did hip-hop become so culturally dominant in the first place? What were the first signs that it was falling off? And how is the industry reacting to it? And lastly, if hip-hop does lose its grip on the top spot, what's going to replace it? My name's Poncho, the host of Rap Lore, and we're gonna dive into it right now.
Damn, a rose grew from the concrete? Same thing with me, you know what I mean? I grew out all this stuff.
In order to understand hip-hop's recent fall-off, it's important to understand its roots and its rise to prominence. Hip-hop was founded in the 1970s in the South Bronx, an area that was decimated by poverty and hopelessness. Its roots were based in 4 key pillars: DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti. The genre mostly started off as party music, with DJs chopping and spinning records at clubs. However, in the early 80s, artists like Curtis Blow, Run DMC, and the Furious 5 began recording over the records and pushing the movement to the mainstream. Later in the 80s, this was amplified more with groups like Public Enemy and A Tribe Called Quest, and even more so in the 90s with the birth of gangster rap. Early hip-hop resonated with people for a few strong reasons. First, it was born in neglected communities. Its forefathers came from places the system had abandoned, and they used the music to speak on issues no one else wanted to touch. Second, it was accessible. You didn't need expensive instruments or years of formal training. All it took were some turntables, a mic, and a voice. And most importantly, it gave people hope. When everything around these communities felt broken, hip-hop brought people together. It gave them a reason to live, laugh, and celebrate, even when the world gave them none. This recipe made hip-hop blow up fast. In 1990, Biz Markie's hit song Just a Friend broke into the top 40 Billboard charts, and since then, hip-hop has kept a presence in this ranking for the last 35 years, until that streak was finally broken on October 25th of 2025. So how could this have happened? The way I see it, there's 4 major things that caused the fall of hip-hop, and today we're gonna break them down one at a time. First and foremost, we have to get this out the way. Billboard did change its rules about how songs chart. The new rules goes like this: if a song drops below number 5 after 78 weeks, it's removed from the charts. If it drops below number 10 after 52 weeks, it's gone. Below number 25 after 26 weeks, gone. And below number 50 after 20 weeks, gone. The thought behind these rules was to prevent songs from endlessly staying on the charts and allow room for new music to rise to the top. When Billboard enforced these new rules in October of 2025, it kicked Kendrick and SZA's hit song Luther out of the charts due to it being listed for 46 weeks, standing at the 38th spot. Also at this time, there were no other hip-hop songs in positions to chart, which meant that hip-hop was officially out of the top 40. Although these rule changes are the thing that directly removed hip-hop from the chart, it's not the thing that caused no other tracks to replace it. That has to do with everything else in this video, with the next thing being labels.
Trust me, you can sell 10 million albums and be broke if you have greedy people behind you.
As I just mentioned, hip-hop was formed in the Bronx as an outlet to the pain and struggle people felt buried in. Communities formed around the music, which over time spread to the people who resonated with it. As time passed, the audience for hip-hop grew bigger, and the people started realizing there was a real market to monetize off of this art. When the late 90s rolled around with artists like Pac, Big, Nas, and Jay in the spotlight, the audience for hip-hop was massive. And with this massive audience was a massive opportunity for labels to monetize, and they made sure they made the most of it. However, there was a big disconnect between the hip-hop community and the music business. Rappers saw rap as a way to spread art and a message, while labels saw it as a product that's marketable to the world and very, very profitable. But because labels had the budgets and the power, they got the last say in what goes out to the world. And most labels did not give two shits It's about the authenticity of the craft. It was all about the bottom line and creating products, also known as artists, who would get them there. This created a space where instead of what was originally skill and authenticity over image, it turned into image over everything, which eroded the core of what made people love the craft in the first place. And this would get worse and worse and worse over the years. Every time an artist came out with a new sound, the industry would watch it, wait for it to gain traction, and then sign a bunch of artists with the goal of recreating that same exact vibe. That's also where the term industry plant came from, which we might do a whole video on that later on. We'll get into that later. Let me know in the comments if you want a video on industry plants. This cycle was successful at getting labels paid, but it repeating itself over and over again just made people mentally check out from what the labels push. The music stopped feeling authentic because it wasn't, and on a subconscious human level, people reject things that don't feel real. The label's pursuit of monetizing hip-hop accidentally killed the golden goose.
When I told my father I wanted to rap, he was very leery of that idea. He said, I heard this business is terrible. And, he's right.
Now, even though labels are horrendously manipulative and evil, it's not just their fault that hip-hop started to slip. The next variable responsible for the decline of hip-hop is really just the landscape of the world today. First of all, there's a shit ton of artists out there. Over 100,000 tracks are uploaded to Spotify daily, and as of October of 2025, there's over 11 million artists signed up to the platform, with an average 4,600 new artist signups daily. This many artists competing for a small number of prestige spots in our culture, plus competing with other genres, is an uphill battle for sure. And it's even worse when you consider all the AI artists and tracks out there, which I spoke about in depth in another video on the channel. On top of the insane number of artists out there, the way that fans consume music is also vastly different from what it used to be. In today's entertainment world, music by itself is rarely ever the focal point. It's usually the backing track for some type of visual, like games, streams, or the most dominant one in our culture today, TikTok. Because of this, a lot of artists don't put the music first. They make music with the goal of fitting it into content. If you're in the music space today, one of the biggest pieces of advice you'll hear creators say is make music with the content in mind, which is good advice if your goal is to live off of your art, but is terrible advice for the spirit and soul of the music. What this leads to is artists essentially making TikTok songs, tracks hyper-engineered to fit the short-form content platforms of today. Because of this, fans consume rappers' music in the same way they consume short-form content, quickly, superficially, and mindlessly. And this, mixed with the sheer number of artists out there, created an environment where the connection between fans and artists is weaker than it's ever been before. Fans don't feel connected enough to artists to repeatedly stream their songs, which is a requirement for any record to shoot up the charts. Now, as much as I'd love to sit here and blame the labels and TikTok for everything bad happening in hip-hop, that's still not the full picture. We've got to talk about the artists themselves.
I come for revenge. Spark the spot. I come for revenge. Revenge.
I'm about to be the villain with this one, but I don't even care. I'm just being honest. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the labels and system tries to do, it's the artist's choice to participate in it or not. If this was the 90s where there were gatekeepers and you could only be successful if you fit a certain mold, I would understand it. But in 2026, no. There's a few areas where rappers are shooting themselves in the foot, with the biggest ones being the music itself and how a lot of them go about creating as a whole. For the music, I don't know how else to say this, but a lot of it today is just mid. Very few rappers actually push the boundaries with their art. The vast majority of records released today could easily be compared to something else on the market, oftentimes identical to music that artist already put out. And for the few times artists do break the mold, it's a matter of maybe a month before 1,000 copycats come out the woodworks, stealing that exact sound and style. Producers release type beats on YouTube with that sound, rappers find them and record in that style with that artist's exact cadence. And next thing you know, the groundbreaking sound becomes mass-produced and watered down to a point that it becomes almost unbearable to listen to. But the sound is just one thing. On top of copying other people's sounds and styles, a lot of artists are equally lazy on the songwriting end. If you ask anyone what most modern rap songs are about, you already know what they're gonna say: drugs, guns, sex, and money. And although it's a stereotype, stereotypes exist for a reason, and most rappers aren't doing much to break that perception. But it's not a surprise that people do this. At the end of the day, the goal for most artists is to live off of their art. Once they recognize there's an audience for the sound, and all they have to do is make that sound and they can get paid, of course they're gonna say, yes, I'll do that. So it's not a surprise, but the reality is, it drives the passion for the genre into the gutter. And unfortunately for us, the vast majority of mainstream music runs with this exact formula, and it's all just mid. And if you don't want to take my word for it, lots of other people in the space share this sentiment. Music reviewer Anthony Fantano made an entire video called "There's Too Much Mid." T-Pain a few years ago went on an unhinged rant on his Twitch stream begging artists to be different. The point is, the regular rapper formula doesn't work anymore. People have seen it too many times and it's absolutely cooked. But the artists keep making it and the labels keep pushing it, and like anything constantly pushed in people's faces that they don't want, they start to reject it harshly. With all that said, the future for hip-hop could look slightly grim. However, there are some big positives that could come from the mess. At this point, labels have almost completely lost their grip on the culture. The days of suits and gatekeepers telling us what we should listen to are over. Without industry influence, rappers are more inclined than ever to make music true to them and the craft that they love. Songs may not be as commercially successful, but they will feel as real, which for most hip-hop fans is all that they need. Lots of amazing indie rappers exist in this space, you just have to dig through a little bit of noise to find them. So that's it. That's how the industry and social media killed rap and took it off the charts. Let me know in the comments if you agree, if you see a future where hip-hop makes a comeback, or if it's destined to keep falling. I might get killed for this one, but it is what it is.